The story begins with a quiet, reflective description of a rural village. The village is small, serene, and picturesque, surrounded by nature's beauty. There is a sense of stillness in the air as the day begins. Kajal, the protagonist, is introduced. She's in her early 30s, with a simple, unassuming appearance. She goes about her daily chores with precision and quiet grace, such as tending to animals or carrying water from the well. The atmosphere is gentle, showing Kajal's routine, but also hinting at her inner world. She feels isolated, unnoticed, and a bit disconnected from the village's social dynamics. The story delves into Kajal's internal monologue. She reflects on how she has never been chosen for marriage, and how the village tends to overlook her for more outwardly attractive women. She wrestles with feelings of inadequacy, not because she's unattractive, but because she doesn't fit the traditional mold the village expects. Her internal world is one of resignation. Kajal wonders if there's any place for her beyond the confines of her duties and responsibilities. She wonders if she'll ever be seen for who she truly is, rather than what society expects her to be. We meet Chand, an elderly village man who has been a quiet observer of Kajal's life. Chand is an authoritative yet wise figure who has seen many changes in the village. He notices Kajal's practical nature and inner strength. Their relationship is subtle and layered. Chand sees potential in Kajal, believing that her abilities go far beyond what others see. But Kajal remains skeptical of his praise, feeling that it's given out of pity rather than true admiration. Chand, however, continues to offer Kajal advice. His wisdom challenges her, but she is hesitant to take it, unsure of her place in the village's greater narrative. There are small, meaningful interactions between Kajal and the villagers. For instance, a passing conversation with a former childhood friend who has since married. This friend, once someone Kajal felt close to, now seems distant, her life following the typical path of marriage and family. Kajal observes the happiness of others, feeling both happy for them and a sense of longing for a connection she has yet to find for herself. These interactions reveal the emotional void she struggles with daily. Chand's continued mentorship becomes more prominent in Kajal's life. Despite her initial reluctance, Kajal begins to look forward to their conversations. Chand is not just offering advice, he's offering wisdom, grounded in life experience, that Kajal slowly begins to internalize. Their interactions are characterized by moments of silence, where much is said without words. Chand speaks in metaphors, and Kajal's internal struggle resonates with each of his lessons. Chand encourages Kajal to look beyond her current life and see the potential for change. He doesn't promise that the village will accept her, but he helps her see that the power to redefine her place lies within her own hands. Slowly, Kajal begins to change. While she doesn't outwardly declare it, she starts embracing a sense of agency. She begins participating more actively in the village's communal activities, such as helping with the construction of a well or offering guidance on certain village matters, though still in the background. Through these subtle actions, Kajal begins to reshape how the villagers perceive her. However, the shift is slow, and there is resistance, especially from those who have only seen her as the unmarried woman without status. There's a growing internal conflict within Kajal. Her fear of rejection is counterbalanced by a small but growing belief in her own value. This belief is fragile but real, and the tension between her self-doubt and her self-discovery adds emotional depth to her journey. A suitor, Ajit, enters the scene. He is a relatively well-off man in the village, known for his charm and appearance. However, his interest in Kajal is far from conventional. Unlike other villagers who've dismissed her, Ajit sees something in her that others overlook. He is drawn to her quiet strength and intelligence. Ajit doesn't simply seek her for marriage. He begins to engage with her intellectually. Their conversations are filled with tension. Kajal feels his attention is both flattering and unsettling. She doesn't know if it's sincere or if he's simply seeking to change her into something she's not. This suitor's arrival forces Kajal to confront her own feelings about love marriage, and independence. While she feels an emotional stir when Ajit shows interest, she also feels ambivalent, unsure if she's ready for the vulnerability that such a relationship would require. As Kajal becomes more involved in the village's activities, some of the villagers begin to take notice. The change is subtle, but it's clear that she's becoming a figure of quiet influence. She's not yet a hero, but there's a growing respect for her contributions, especially when her decisions help improve the village's living conditions. However, this shift is met with skepticism by some, especially by those who've always seen her as an outsider. The other women, who once dismissed her as an oddity, begin to view her actions with a mix of admiration and envy. A key moment arises when Kajal confronts a problem within the village, perhaps a dispute over resources or an issue that requires leadership. In this moment, Kajal is forced to take a stand, making a decision that showcases her emerging strength and potential as a leader. Despite the changes, Kajal's internal world is still one of doubt. She questions whether she is truly capable of changing her life, or whether her new role is simply a fleeting phase. She begins to wonder whether people are truly seeing her for who she is, or if they're simply seeing the woman who has now filled a void in the village. These quiet moments of reflection are key to her development. Kajal still wrestles with her worthiness and feels conflicted about embracing her new identity. She worries about the cost of her growing independence and whether it will come at the expense of her personal happiness or connections. As Ajit's interest in Kajal deepens, so too does the tension between them. He begins to express his feelings more openly, taking opportunities to spend time with her. He offers her the kind of attention that she's never received before, a type of attention that is both flattering and intimidating. Kajal remains ambivalent. She likes Ajit, but her fear of vulnerability keeps her at arm's length. The possibility of marriage stirs up old fears of being trapped, of losing herself in someone else's idea of who she should be. Ajit's affection begins to feel like a paradox. She wants it, but she's afraid of what it might cost. This tension manifests in their conversations. Ajit talks about a future with her, but Kajal hesitates, unsure if she's ready for that future or if that future is what she truly desires. She is at a crossroads. Will she continue to embrace her newfound independence, or will she allow someone else to define her future? Kajal's growing influence in the village doesn't go unnoticed, and while some villagers respect her, others view her with growing suspicion. Whispers begin to spread, with some questioning whether a woman, especially one who has been considered unmarriageable, should hold such sway. The village's reaction begins to weigh on Kajal's mind. She starts to wonder whether she's truly accepted for who she is, or if her changing role is merely a temporary aberration. She feels a quiet tension between her desire to fit in and her growing conviction that she doesn't need to conform to the village's expectations. This internal struggle intensifies when a village elder, once a strong supporter of Kajal's, begins to distance himself. He questions her ability to lead, suggesting that she may have overstepped her bounds. This moment forces Kajal to confront her own doubts about her place in the village and her ability to truly make a difference. A significant event occurs, perhaps a crisis in the village that requires a leader to step forward. Kajal, who has been working behind the scenes, is faced with the decision to take charge. This moment is crucial, as she's forced to confront her own fear of failure. She hesitates, questioning whether she's truly capable of leading or if she's just playing a role. This self-doubt consumes her, as she begins to fear that her efforts will ultimately be futile, and that she may not be strong enough to live up to the expectations others have of her. Kajal spends time in isolation, reflecting on her past and her journey. She recalls moments of self-rejection and loneliness, the years spent waiting for something to change, and the quiet resolve she's built. This internal monologue allows the reader to see her vulnerabilities, giving depth to her emotional arc. In the face of this crisis, Kajal finds a moment of clarity. She realizes that her worth is not defined by the village's acceptance, nor by Ajit's affection. Her strength comes from within, the quiet resilience that has always been a part of her. This realization doesn't come in a grand, dramatic moment, but in a quiet, introspective one. Kajal understands that she doesn't need to seek approval from anyone, that she can carve her own path. She decides to step up, not because she has to, but because she believes she is capable. Her decision is a quiet act of defiance against the self-doubt that has plagued her for so long. She takes charge of the situation, making a decision that benefits the village and demonstrates her growth. After the crisis is resolved, Kajal emerges as a new person, not dramatically transformed, but with a quiet, steady confidence. The village begins to see her in a new light, not as the unmarried woman, but as a leader in her own right. Ajit's role in her life also shifts. He continues to care for her, but Kajal no longer feels the pressure to conform to his expectations. She realizes that while she values him, she cannot be defined by his affection. The relationship between Kajal and Ajit becomes more complex. Ajit respects her independence, and while there are still moments of tension, he begins to see her not just as a potential wife, but as a person in her own right. With Kajal's newfound confidence and her decisive actions, the village begins to shift in its perception of her. She's no longer seen as an outsider or an unworthy woman. She's respected for her leadership and her quiet strength. However, this change doesn't come without its own complications. Some villagers still resist her role, questioning whether she's truly worthy of their respect. But Kajal no longer seeks validation from them. She has found her own sense of peace and purpose, and that is enough. The story ends not with a dramatic resolution, but with a quiet acceptance of Kajal's place in the world. She has come to terms with who she is, and she no longer seeks approval from the village or from Ajit. She has learned that true strength lies in accepting oneself, flaws, and all. There is no clear-cut ending to her story, as the future remains open. But Kajal is at peace, knowing that whatever path she chooses, she will walk it with confidence and authenticity. The narrative lingers on her quiet resolve, leaving readers with a sense of contemplation about the journey they've witnessed. The immediate aftermath of Kajal's decision to step up as a leader brings a sense of calm. The village begins to stabilize, and Kajal's role as a quiet yet strong figure becomes firmly established. There's no fanfare, no public celebration, just the steady respect that comes from her actions. Kajal reflects on the personal growth she's undergone throughout the story. She realizes that her journey was never about achieving external validation or meeting others' expectations. It was about learning to trust herself and her abilities. The reader gets a glimpse into Kajal's thoughts, where she quietly acknowledges the lessons she's learned about resilience, independence, and self-worth. These reflections are subtle but powerful, allowing the reader to feel the depth of her inner transformation. Ajit, too, has undergone a change. His feelings for Kajal have deepened, but his respect for her independence has grown as well. He no longer sees her solely as a potential wife, but as an equal. Their relationship evolves into something more complex, rooted in mutual respect rather than expectation. In a quiet, unspoken way, Ajit accepts that Kajal is not someone to be controlled or owned. This realization frees him from the pressure he once felt to claim her. Their relationship becomes one of shared understanding, where both can grow individually without losing their connection. Ajit and Kajal have a moment of shared reflection. Perhaps they talk, or perhaps their connection is conveyed through a single meaningful glance. Ajit respects Kajal's decision to live life on her own terms, and Kajal in turn finds peace in knowing that he has accepted her as she is. As time passes, the village's view of Kajal continues to evolve. Though there are still murmurs from a few holdouts, the majority of the villagers now see her as a figure to be respected. She becomes a symbol of quiet strength, someone who defied expectations and created a path for herself. The shift is gradual, and the villagers' respect for Kajal doesn't come in grand gestures. Instead, it manifests in small but significant ways. A nod of approval from an elder, a subtle acknowledgement from those who once doubted her. The village's changing perception becomes a backdrop to Kajal's own personal journey, illustrating the idea that true transformation often happens quietly and over time. Despite her external progress, Kajal experiences moments of self-doubt. These moments are not dramatic or overwhelming, but they are deeply human. There are still times when she wonders whether she made the right choice, whether the path she's chosen is truly hers, or if it's the result of societal pressure. These doubts don't undo her growth, but they add complexity to her character. They remind the reader that personal transformation is rarely linear. Kajal's vulnerability becomes more relatable, highlighting that even strong individuals have moments of uncertainty. In these moments, Kajal takes comfort in her solitude. She realizes that her journey has never been about reaching a final destination. It's about the continual process of becoming, of learning to accept herself, even when the doubts arise. The emotional climax occurs when Kajal finds herself in a situation that requires her to make a difficult decision, perhaps regarding her future, the village, or her relationship with Ajit. In this moment, she faces her doubts head-on. Kajal makes the choice that feels right to her, not based on what others expect, but because it aligns with her true self. This decision represents a quiet but powerful turning point, where Kajal fully embraces her individuality and the autonomy she's worked so hard to claim. The reader experiences Kajal's clarity not through grand gestures, but through her calm and confident action. This moment feels deeply earned, as it's rooted in the slow, introspective journey she's been on throughout the story. The story doesn't end with a definitive conclusion. Instead, it leaves the future open, with Kajal at peace with her choices. She has found a sense of purpose, not because she has fulfilled external expectations, but because she has learned to live authentically. Kajal doesn't need to know what the future holds. She simply knows that she is capable of handling whatever comes her way. The sense of closure comes not from a tidy resolution, but from the quiet satisfaction of knowing that she is on the right path, even if it's uncertain. The story leaves room for the reader to imagine Kajal's future. Will she continue to lead the village? Will she eventually choose a life with Ajit? Or will she remain independent? These questions remain unanswered, but the reader understands that Kajal's journey is ongoing, and that's enough. The final moments of the story focus on Kajal's legacy, which is not about what she achieved externally, but about the personal transformation she underwent. Her legacy is one of quiet strength, introspection, and the courage to live on her own terms. The story closes with Kajal, perhaps looking out over the village, contemplating the journey she's been on. There's a sense of peace in her demeanor, a quiet assurance that she has become the person she always wanted to be, not perfect, but whole. The final image of Kajal, perhaps a simple one, like her standing alone in the early morning light, serves as a reflection of her growth. She's no longer the girl who is unsure of her place in the world. She is the woman who has created her own space. Kajal is faced with a final challenge that forces her to confront the very expectations she has been running from throughout the story. This could involve a climactic moment where the villagers, especially those who have initially doubted her, demand something from her, perhaps a public display of her leadership or a choice between the life she's built and the traditional role she was expected to assume. The tension is palpable, and Kajal is caught in a whirlwind of emotions, the pull of familial and societal obligations versus her hard-earned independence. This section underscores Kajal's internal conflict, showcasing the deep-rooted struggle between fulfilling her personal desires and satisfying the expectations of others. Ajit plays a pivotal role in this moment of decision. His character development culminates in an emotional conversation with Kajal, where he quietly reassures her of his respect and admiration for her choices. Unlike before, Ajit is no longer pressuring her to conform to traditional ideals of marriage and womanhood. He expresses his genuine understanding and acceptance of the woman Kajal has become. This reaffirmation strengthens their bond, but it is also clear that Kajal's journey is her own. Ajit's feelings no longer define her choices. Ajit's words are not grand declarations of love, but a quiet recognition of her autonomy. He conveys that he believes in her, whatever path she decides to take, and that their connection will endure regardless of external circumstances. The emotional climax of the story occurs when Kajal makes her final decision, one that will not only define her future, but also challenge the village's perception of her. Kajal, standing at the crossroads of societal pressure and self-determination, takes a bold step towards her own future. She refuses to adhere to the expectations of marriage or social obligation if it compromises her identity and freedom. She declares, either through action or words, her commitment to living on her own terms, free from the constraints of tradition. This choice might come at a personal cost, perhaps a sacrifice of potential relationships, opportunities, or connections, but it represents Kajal's ultimate liberation and self-actualization. The aftermath of Kajal's decision is not dramatic, but instead it is a subtle shift in the village's collective mindset. Over time, Kajal's quiet strength and independence become undeniable to the villagers. Slowly but surely, the villagers begin to see her not as an outlier, but as a person who has redefined what it means to live authentically. The respect for Kajal grows, and while there will always be those who doubt or gossip, the majority of the village now recognizes the value of her choices. Kajal's story is no longer one of defiance, but of quiet revolution. She has become a figure of resilience, a reminder that it is possible to live a life true to oneself, even in the face of overwhelming societal pressure. Ajit undergoes his own transformation. While he once sought to tie himself to Kajal in a traditional sense, he now understands that true love and partnership do not require possession or conformity. There is no overt romantic resolution, but Ajit's quiet understanding of Kajal's independence marks the final step in his personal journey. He sees her for who she truly is, a woman capable of making her own choices and living her life freely. Ajit's role in the story transitions from one of romantic pursuit to one of profound respect, reflecting the depth of his character development and the maturation of his feelings for Kajal. Kajal experiences a deeply personal moment of reflection, where she fully grasps the weight and significance of her journey. Standing alone, perhaps in the quiet of the village or beneath the wide sky, she feels a sense of peace wash over her. This moment of self-realization marks Kajal's emotional liberation. She no longer needs external validation to feel whole. Her journey has taught her that true fulfillment comes from within, and she has learned to trust herself, her choices, and her path. There is a sense of quiet triumph in Kajal's realization. She has overcome societal expectations, personal doubt, and external pressures to arrive at a place of inner peace and strength. The story ends not with a definitive conclusion, but with a sense of hopeful possibility. Kajal's journey is ongoing. She has not arrived at some final destination, but is instead continuing to shape her future according to her own vision. She walks forward into an uncertain future, unburdened by the weight of expectations, but fully grounded in her own self-awareness and strength. Her future is open, and the reader is invited to imagine the paths she will take, whether in leadership, love, or personal growth. There is no need to know exactly what happens next. What matters is that Kajal is no longer defined by what others want for her, but by her own agency. In the final scene, the story subtly shifts focus to Kajal's legacy. Her journey may not have been one of public glory, but her quiet strength has left an indelible mark on those around her. Kajal's story serves as a reminder that personal transformation often happens quietly, without fanfare, but is no less powerful for it. Her legacy is not defined by what she accomplished in the eyes of others, but by her ability to live authentically and to inspire those who are willing to see her for who she truly is. The closing image might be of Kajal walking alone, but with a sense of purpose and peace. It's not an end, but a continuation, her story unfolding on her terms. The story begins with Kajal in a quiet, reflective moment, perhaps sitting alone at dawn or walking through the fields, feeling the weight of the village's expectations pressing down on her. She is now a symbol of change, but with that comes the burden of standing apart. The subtle yet constant pressure from the villagers continues, and though Kajal outwardly displays confidence, internally she is wrestling with doubts about whether her decisions are enough to change her own life and the village's view of her. She wonders if she'll ever truly be accepted, if her efforts will be seen as something more than an anomaly, or if she'll always be regarded as someone different. Flashbacks reveal Kajal's past struggles, perhaps a childhood shaped by overbearing expectations, moments when she was silenced, or when her desires were dismissed. These memories, though painful, are what have shaped the woman she is today. Kajal reflects on her first moments of defiance and self-determination, her gradual awareness of her own agency, and the eventual realization that she has to break free from the past to build her future. These moments of retrospection allow the reader to see the full extent of Kajal's journey, from timid compliance to bold defiance. Despite her growing independence, the village continues to impose its traditional views. There are murmurs of discontent among some elders, and even some of her closest family members remain skeptical. Kajal has moments where she feels like she's fighting a losing battle. Her progress is slow, and the village still clings to the familiar way of life. One particularly poignant moment might involve a confrontation where a close family member expresses their disappointment or concern. This could be a significant turning point where Kajal questions whether she's doing the right thing. Ajit's character takes on a more introspective role in this outline. He no longer pressures Kajal to choose between him and her independence. Instead, he becomes a silent pillar of support, understanding that Kajal needs space and time to explore her own identity. They have a deeply emotional conversation where Ajit expresses his respect for Kajal's journey. He no longer seeks her to be a reflection of his desires, but rather the person she has become. His quiet presence offers a form of emotional safety for Kajal, providing her with the comfort of knowing that there is at least one person who truly understands her. Kajal reaches a point where the weight of standing alone becomes almost unbearable. The isolation is felt not only from the village, but also from her inner circle. Friends who are afraid of change, family who fears for her future, and even Ajit, who has silently accepted her choices but can't fully alleviate her loneliness. A particularly poignant scene shows Kajal walking through the village at night, hearing the faint whispers of those who still believe she's making a mistake. She stands in the quiet, grappling with the loneliness of being misunderstood, a woman alone in a world that doesn't know what to make of her. In her solitude, Kajal experiences a quiet turning point, a realization that while others may never fully understand her choices, it's not about them. It's about her ability to live with her decisions and be at peace with who she has become. This shift in perspective marks Kajal's first real step toward inner peace. It's a profound moment where she accepts that her value doesn't lie in external validation, but in her own self-acceptance. The turning point may come when Kajal reflects on a moment from her childhood, or a conversation with Ajit, where she realizes that the most important relationship is the one she has with herself. Slowly, the village begins to shift. Kajal's consistent presence, her unwavering commitment to her path, and the small acts of kindness and leadership she shows begin to change the hearts of those around her. Rather than grand gestures, it's the small moments, helping a neighbor, quietly giving advice to a younger woman, or simply offering support to those in need, that allow the villagers to see her as more than just a rebellious figure. She becomes a symbol of quiet strength, of living with purpose and conviction. The climax of this reconciliation may come in a subtle, unexpected way, perhaps during a communal event, where Kajal is asked to take on a leadership role. This quiet acceptance by the village is not an overt victory, but a peaceful acknowledgement of the change she has brought about. Ajit, who has been supportive throughout, now recognizes that Kajal's journey is not something that needs his approval. It's something she must continue on her own. He no longer seeks to claim her, but instead He acknowledges the person she has become. His final gesture might be a quiet departure from her life, not in the sense of breaking up, but in the realization that they have both changed and that Kajal's path is hers alone. He wishes her well and expresses that he will always be there, but that her story now belongs to her. This departure marks the end of the romantic subplot, with Ajit's acceptance of Kajal's independence, serving as a powerful conclusion to his character arc. The story reaches its emotional peak when Kajal, standing alone but at peace, reflects on everything she's gone through. She's no longer searching for external validation, nor does she feel the need to conform to what others expect of her. The final scene might show Kajal in the early morning, sitting quietly in the fields or walking through the village, this time with a sense of serenity. She is fully aware of the path she has chosen, and while it has not been easy, it is the one that feels true to her. The story closes on a note of profound self-acceptance. Kajal has found peace, not because the world has accepted her, but because she has accepted herself. As the narrative closes, Kajal's transformation is complete. Her journey may have been one of solitude, but it was also one of profound strength. Her legacy is not defined by the approval of others, but by her ability to live authentically and inspire others through her example. The villagers, now with a new understanding of her journey, look to Kajal not as an outsider, but as a leader in their own right. Her story has quietly redefined the boundaries of what a woman can achieve, leaving a lasting impact on the village and the lives she's touched. The final words are a quiet reflection on Kajal's strength, both the strength to stand alone and the strength to love and accept herself, regardless of external pressures.